Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here, and today we're in a battle against the League of Evil X's. In this fight, can Scott and his friends defeat Ramona's Evil X, Matthew Patel, and his demon hipster chicks? Will they triumph, and will Scott maybe gain a little self-respect along the way? Well, let's find out. Scott Pilgrim Miniatures the World is for 2 to 3 players, takes 45 to 60 minutes to play, for ages 14 and up, and published by Renegade Game Studios. Now today I'm going to be doing a rules school. That means I'm going to teach you how to set up and play the game so that you don't have to read the rulebook yourself. Now I've placed timestamps below me in the description of this video, just in case you want to jump to a specific section of the rules. Without further ado, let's get started. Scott Pilgrim Miniatures the World is a miniatures game for 2 to 3 players, where one of you will play as an evil X like Matthew Patel and the demon hipster chicks, where all other players work cooperatively together to defeat that evil X using 4 of the good characters. Matthew Patel will be rolling his specific dice and using these for actions along with the demon hipster chicks, while the good characters are going to be rolling the dice and splitting them up as they see fit to work best together as a team. You'll be moving around, punching, kicking, grabbing and throwing objects, and getting more health. And as you deal damage, you'll be going up in experience points and getting new powers like combos and advanced abilities that will get better and better the more experience you get. You'll be picking up and throwing objects like tables and chairs and amps and mic stands and drums at the opposition. And the good guys will be able to use some cool items as well, like a lip lock. And if the good team is able to get Matthew Patel down to 0, they'll win. And if Matthew Patel is able to get all the good characters down to 0, he'll win. To set up, you'll first take the rocket venue board, unfold it, and place it in the middle of the table. Next, you'll place the stage riser box on the left side just behind this red dotted line, and make sure the icons are on the column that's closest to that red line. Next, you'll place the cardboard objects that you've put together on its corresponding icon. You're now going to split up into teams. Regardless of the amount of players, one player is going to play against all the other players, and that player is Matthew Patel. Now this player will take the board for Matthew Patel, the miniature, and the 3 demon hipster miniatures. You'll also set the health on this board to 35. You'll take an XP star marker and place it in the bottom part of the XP meter, and you'll take 2 black cubes, which are dice trackers for later. All the other players will be on the good side, and those players are going to collectively take 4 characters. So from these 5 that are available, 4 will be selected. If there's only 1 player on this side, meaning it's a 2-player game, they would still run all 4 characters. If there's more than 1 player on this side, you split those 4 characters as even as possible. Now, if you wish, the good guys can choose to play with 1 or 2 or 3 characters, and we'll change that setup as we go on. Now, for each of the good characters, you'll take the board, the miniature, you'll put an XP marker at the bottom of the XP meter, you'll take 2 dice tracker cubes, just like the bad team did, and you're going to set this health depending on the amount of good guys there are and what level of difficulty you're going for. And you'll refer to this table as to the amount of good guys that you're playing with and the level of difficulty, and you'll set that starting health for all of those players to that on the good side. Next, you'll shuffle all these item cards. You'll give 1 face down to each of the good guy characters. Now, each of the players running those characters can look at these cards, but you keep them secret from the bad team. Next, the good guys will place their characters on the stage riser, just making sure they're in a spot that's not already taken by another character or an object. Next, the bad guy will select a starting spot for the Matthew Patel miniature anywhere behind this red dotted line. Then they'll place all 3 demon hipster chicks within 2 spaces of the Matthew Patel miniature, and they must go on unoccupied squares. You'll notice the rest of the board does have some spots that have some icons of items that you have put together at the beginning of the game as cardboard. And then you'll place them on the board, and you want to make sure the damage side is face down as we see here. This is what the damage side looks like. You want to make sure you can't see this. It should be like this. You're going to give the 3 yellow dice to the good guy team, and you're going to give the 3 red dice, and to start the game, the 2 blue dice to the bad guy team. These blue dice are going to be used by both teams back and forth, but since the bad guys take the first turn, they'll get all of those dice to start with. You'll also take the trophy token and all the booster tokens and place them in the supply off to the side of the board. Next, you'll place the dice tracker board close to the board where everyone can see and reach it. The object of the game depends on which side you're playing. If you're the good guys, you want to get Matthew Patel, collectively as a team, down to 0 health. If so, you win. If you're the bad guy playing Matthew Patel and the demon hipster chicks, you want to get all of the good players to 0 health, knocking them all out. The game is played over multiple rounds. Each round, the bad guys will go first, and then the good guys will go. And each of those sides, you'll go through the same 2 phases, rolling dice, and then taking actions. So since the bad guys go first, let's go over their actions and how their turns work. First, you're going to roll the dice. And again, the bad guys always get 3 red and 2 blue. Now, at any point on your turn, at any time, you can take all of the same symbol that's rolled and you can re-roll them. Once per turn you can do this. And you must make sure that you have not spent those dice. In this case we just rolled them and we see this and maybe we want to re-roll these 2 hearts. And so we re-rolled them and it looks like this. Now remember, you can take actions with some of those other dice as long as you haven't spent a certain icon of dice. You can re-roll all of them once per turn. You can do this. Now, as shown on the side of the boards, you can see what these dice do. Well, one of the things you can do is move, and different dice allow you to move a different spot. So if you have the speed die, you can move up to 3 spots. All the other dice you can use to move 2. We're going to go over what these boosters do and how you get them a little bit later. So let's say that he decided to use the speed die and he can move up to 3. Now when you move, you can move into any direction. So you could even go diagonal. So you can go 1, 2, 3, for example. Now, with Matthew Patel, anytime he moves, he can move his demon hipster chicks, each of them that same amount in any direction. So each of these are now also going to be able to move 3. So maybe now they've all moved to here. But let's say it looked like this. When you move, you can push characters or items. And in this case, let's say he moved 3. He would push this character 1, 2, 3. Now pushing is just a gentle nudge. It does not do damage to the character being pushed, and you can never move into a space with another player if it would cause the character to push them into the wall, which is right here. But if an ability pushes a character into a wall, then it does take damage. Now this will die you can use to punch, and you can do 1 damage into any direction. Now if Patel was here, he could punch this item, which would flip it over and make it show damage. If it was damage and it got hit, it would be removed from the game. Or instead, maybe he wants to hit Scott Pilgrim. But in that case, he would reduce his health by 1, so he was at 20 starting the game, and now he's down to 19. Now instead of just doing 1 die for a punch, you could have done a second one, which is a power-up, and instead of just doing 1 damage, it would have done an additional damage, so 2, and you get an experience point. Gaining an XP moves this up 1 just like this. If you ever get it to the top, you have a new power unlocked. Now when this happens, you are going to take one of your tracking cubes and you're going to unlock this combo, making it available. You're also going to take this and put it for the first time in this top spot like this. This shows you some advanced abilities. Now everybody has some starter abilities that are pretty self-explanatory as to what dice you use and what those do, but this unlocked this. You're also going to reset this back down like this. Also, you'll notice some abilities show these icons with 3 arrows, and that icon means any dice face. So for target blast, you need 1 magic die face and any 2 other die faces. Now all these combos and abilities, I'm not going to go over those. They pretty much tell you what they are and what they do. If you ever see this symbol, it just means any die. Now combos are different from advanced abilities. Combos are, it's a one-time use. Once you use this ability and do what it says, you remove this and place it back over here. This advanced ability, this means you can use this or anything above it. So let's say we unlocked this again and we had already used our combo, it would come back. If it was still here, it would just stay there. So this is a one-time use and you get it again by getting here. But if you get this all the way up here again, you would reset that and you would move this down 1, and now you have the advanced abilities of this and anything that's above it. So if it gets up here again, this would move down, this would reset, and now you have all these advanced abilities available to you. And again, the combo is one-time use, but you can bring it back if you get all the way up on the XP level. And most of these mechanisms like these also work exactly the same for the good team. Now if you wanted to kick instead, you'd use the speed die to do 1 damage adjacent, and if you had 2 dice, you'd do an additional damage and XP. Pretty much the same thing as punch, just using a different type of die. Now the health here, they're basically allowing you to gain 2 health, but you can never get more health than what you started with. Now Matthew Patel, he has a different die. This is magic. Now when he uses this, it says it right here, you can spend that as a wild or as 2 health. And this also reminds you that you can use any die spend for 2 movement. Now, the Rocket Club has a lot of different things like items, like tables and chairs and band equipment. And as shown here, you can use this to grab an object. So let's say Matthew Patel takes this spot, because it's one spot away in any direction, takes this chair, and you'll just place it near your player board. Now, these objects, they're awkward and they're heavy to hold, so while you hold them, you cannot punch, kick, or grab another object, or use a special ability. But you still can take some of those other actions. For example, you might move with them. However, if you were to take damage and you're holding an object, you wouldn't take it here. In fact, if you got one damage hit to you, you would flip it over, showing the damaged side, and you would place it within one spot adjacent to you, which are all the 8 surrounding spots, of course assuming that they're empty, and placing it like that. Instead, if that object already had damage, it would then be removed from the game. Now you can throw an object that you're holding. It doesn't cost any dice to do so if it's an object. Now let's say you need line of sight. Now the way the line of sight works with the objects, and there's some different items we'll show you later and abilities where you need line of sight. I have line of sight because it's empty all the way up to here. I have line of sight to Scott Pilgrim. My line of sight does not go to here because there's a table or an object there. It stops just like that. And I don't have line of sight past this demon hipster chick because there's a character. So you have line of sight until you see a character or an object in any direction, or a wall, of course. So I could throw this all the way line of sight to hit Scott Pilgrim. So Scott was standing here and we threw that object. Now when it hits Scott, not only is it going to do 1 damage to Scott, it's also going to knock him back 1. And knockback is sort of a technical thing in this game. And not only does it knock him back, he takes a damage, and the table takes a damage, and it ends up where Scott originally was, just like that. So Scott took a damage, and the table took a damage, and we get 1 XP. And don't forget to take those like that. Now, if this was already damaged when I threw it when it hit Scott, he would still get knocked back, but this would now get removed out of the game. Now let's say that we have this same line of sight going in this direction, and we had this chair, and we wanted to throw it at Scott Pilgrim. Now he's up against the edge here, which is a wall like this. So when it comes here, it's going to hit him right here, and he's going to take 1 damage. We're still going to get 1 experience point, and this is going to get damaged. But instead of this being able to be knocked back and this move into its spot, because it hits a wall, Scott takes an additional damage. So he's going to take 2 damage. Now during knockbacks, if for some reason through some other ability, Scott was supposed to be knocked back multiple spots, it doesn't matter. He still just takes 1 damage and stops at the wall. Now in this case, let's say he was throwing this here, it would hit Scott and it would knock him back, but it would also knock her back too. He would take a damage, he would get an experience point, and this would still get damaged like this. Or let's say he was throwing it now. It would go here and it's going to hit Scott. So this is going to get damaged. Now Scott's going to get knocked back, which is going to knock back her. And since Scott's getting knocked back, she goes sort of through the wall there. And she's going to go to any adjacent spot next to the thing that just knocked her back. And the active player gets to decide where she goes. Let's say he places her here. Now because she was placed here through that, she does not get an item, even though this is an item spot. You have to go on your own movement to get an item. And this would end up being here. So this took a damage, Scott took a damage, she took a damage, and he got an experience point. Now, even though you can't deal damage directly to a teammate, knocking back is one way to actually inherently and accidentally do damage to your own teammates. Now, this middle line of the board, all of these are colored differently because they're in item space, and it shows this little icon here. Now, when Matthew Patel goes in one of these, they must take 1 card from the item deck and throw it. And if it does damage, it'll always just do 1 damage regardless of what the card says it should do. Plus, the evil X like Matthew Patel can only do this action once per turn. And the demon hipster chicks cannot take this action. For example, he'd throw these nachos, and even though it says it does 2 damage, if it hits somebody, it would only do 1 damage. And nothing else on the card really matters. You just always disregard the text there. You throw it, whatever it is, and if it hits somebody else, it's going to do 1 damage. And then this card is discarded. Also keep in mind, in order to do this, he must actually move himself into the square. It doesn't happen if he gets knocked back into one of those. So once he's done with all of his dice and he's rolled them, he's possibly re-rolled all of one symbol once per turn and taken all the actions, he'll then pass the 2 blue dice to the good guys. And just like the bad guys, once per turn they can re-roll all unspent dice of the same type once per turn. Now these dice are pretty much shared between all of the good characters, and you can do it in any order. Like one character might heal, then another character might move, then another character might move, then somebody else might do. So you can just basically, you work together, talk through turns, and sometimes some characters might not take a turn that turn. So you'll split these dice up and you guys all decide collectively who does what when. And you already know what all of these dice do. because they're written on the side of the board and on your player board as well, like hearts are wild or 2 health, any die can be spent for 2 movement, and then on the side of the board, all the same actions that I had already showed you. Now there are a couple of differences with the good team. For example, if they go into one of the item spaces, that character will draw a card. Now let's just say they keep it, first of all, they keep it hidden so that the bad guys can't see what's there. And it's shared, assuming these are all unequipped. Now, let's just say it was those nachos that we showed earlier. So this is going to stay hidden and it's unequipped. Now, not all cards require to be equipped. Now this, again, it's going to stay hidden and it's shared, which means you can share all your unequipped item cards. So now someone could throw this to deal 2 damage or eat it to gain 2 health, then you discard it. The cards pretty much tell you what to do. And each good character can only get 1 item per turn. So this player can move this character here and they'd also get an item as well. Now, the good guys can use an item or they can equip it. Now, this says well equipped, so some cards do say this. So when a bad guy uses an ability, you can cancel its effect and move 1 space, then discard this card. So you'll have to decide which person is, equipping that. Now, once you've equipped an item, you will keep it equipped forever. And if you are knocked out, all of your equipped items transfer to a teammate. And you'll keep doing this until all the dice are spent, spending those different actions for different characters on the good team. Now, if any of the characters did not do anything on their turn, they'll get a booster token and they'll put it in just like that. Now, you can equip an item that someone else pretty much drew, you can equip it, but you can't even use an item. So only if you've done nothing more than just equip an item, you get a booster token. Now it even tells you right here that you can spend this for 2 movement or use 1 basic ability. And that reminds you on the board, 2 for movement, or you can use it for any of the basic abilities. Now a couple last things about the good guys' turns. If they do even 1 damage to a demon hipster chick, it gets poofed and it's off the board. You place it next to the Matthew Patel board. And that hipster chick will stay off the board until the end of the bad guy's next turn, which means if you poof some of the demon hipster chicks, they're not going to have use for them this next turn, because at the end of their next turn is when they can summon any demon hipster chicks that have been poofed, and they put him within 2 spaces away from where he is, obviously in an unoccupied spot. And the last thing I'll cover are ranged abilities. Some abilities will do damage to anything within a certain amount of spaces, like the mic stand from Steven, deal 1 damage to each bad guy in sight within 3 spaces, and that's in any direction, and it doesn't matter if things are blocking them or not. That's pretty much how to play. If at any point in time Matthew Patel's at 0 health, the good guys win. If all of the good characters are at 0, the bad player wins. Well, I hope this helped you dive right into Scott Pilgrim Miniatures the World quicker than you normally would if you had to read the rulebook yourself. Now, if you have further questions about the rules, I've placed a link below me in the description of this video. Now, that's the best place to ask them since I'll be notified, but so will Renegade Game Studios.